Hey everyone, Yan Zhao back again. Today we have Eric Weathers, the man whose work I'm sure you've seen if you bought indie comics in the last couple of years. Uh, the most prolific letterer, who maybe he'll tell us his secret, how he manages to get all that work done, and who is currently in the last week of his own comics, Indiegogo, Battle Brick Road. Thank you for
Hello.
coming.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
So I have to ask, since you seem to be like the go-to letterer
hmm
for all the Comicsgate and I'm sure other people who aren't necessarily Comicsgate aligned,
Sure.
how how did you manage to fill that niche?
Uh, good timing. Good timing and a little bit of skill, and I think that was all Comicsgate needed. It started back in late 2018, September or so. I John Malin had put a thing on Twitter that said, "Hey, we're looking for a letterer. We want like a '90s Spawn style." And I hadn't really done much lettering outside of my own books with Flying Fortress. I had lettered one other book a couple of months before this thing popped up, and I thought, "Oh, man, well, you know what? I'll give it a shot." And I submitted a sample page to John, and I got hired. And as far as I know, from what he said publicly, most people were like
Mhm.
asking for a script or whatever. I found lyrics from a Metallica song and put it to the page, and just sort of gave it that Tom Orzechowski '90s style flair, if you will. And at the time, there weren't a whole lot of books in CG, so my name
Yeah.
just got passed around, and then it just sort of became the only name for lettering for a while. And I guess I just right place, right time, and it turned out great for me because it turned into a career. I support a family on this on this income just from lettering comic books and maybe running a campaign. So it's been fantastic.
Yeah, it's amazing. And so you say you weren't really a typography nerd or anything before this popped up?
No, not really. I did graphic design in college, but I dropped out of college before I joined the army. We studied typography,
Mhm.
as one of those like basics of design kind of things. But all that stuff was not much of it was computer based, and that was 15 years ago or so. It was all like draw your own font on this graph paper. So,
Oh,
and it wasn't really like uh, all that in depth. It was just learning about kerning and letting and serif and sans serif and all of that stuff. Nothing groundbreaking. Um, but comic book lettering was, it's part of the process of making a book. And when I was working on Flying Fortress way back in the day, it was just one of those things. It's like, well, I got to letter the book. I don't know how to letter it. So I found some videos online that sort of taught me how to use Illustrator,
mhm.
and I lettered Flying Fortress. And um, in that in that series, I wore all the hats at one point or another. So when it came to lettering, I had finished penciling, inking, and coloring a page. There was almost this relief, and lettering was a uh, something I didn't really have to think about, and it was relaxing. And I think I just sort of really enjoyed the process. And when I had a friend who said, "Hey, I need a letter for my book," I put a sample in for that, and got hired for that too. So that was the one book right before, Graveyard Shift. So it just sort of, I don't know, it's something I enjoy doing. I don't know. It's fun for me, it is. I really enjoy lettering. I like getting to be creative on the page with word balloons and sound effects and all of that. It's not without its struggles, but
Sure.
yeah, it's certainly enjoyable.
So I think a lot of people would be a little bit confused about um, sort of the role of the letterer.
Mhm.
Uh, I think some people would view it as like the guy who just throws it into Word and like, copy and paste. And then other people, would think that, well, I met a couple people who've said, oh, no, no, they're integral in the initial design phases of
Mm.
the books. And
Depends on the book.
I'm just kind of wondering, like, where, since you've done quite a number of books, where do you find yourself on that spectrum?
For the most part, I'm just, back end sort of, like, I don't have a whole lot of leeway in terms of
Mhm.
input. Sometimes, I will say, um, well, for instance, on Door Kickers, a book I did written by Scott McCullough, um, he had a very wordy page, very wordy page. In fact, there was one panel that was it was a headshot panel, very small, and the way it was written, there were like giant amounts of text. Like there were like 3 or 4 word balloons, but they were enormous. I sent him a screenshot. I'm like, Scott, this isn't going to work. So he's like, yeah, we're gonna have to rewrite it. So there are times when restraints of the page from the artist and the writer, or any combination, will have to have me step in and at least nudge somebody and say, hey, how about could we cut this down? Could we do this or that? But um, I don't make any of those changes on the fly unless it's as an example. So it'll be like, hey, this is kind of wordy. What if we just changed it to this? You know?
Mhm.
So those things do happen. But in terms of setting that up from the beginning of a project, not it's not really where lettering is involved, unless I'm the one drawing the book. Like I'm working on what you have on the screen right now, Battlebrick
Mhm.
Road. I'm conscious of where these balloon placements, even though I know I'm not working on the dialogue isn't 100%, but I'm still drawing in a way that I know where my letters are going to go. So,
So
when it's your own project, it's different.
so as you're doing Battle Brick Road and maybe Flying Fortress, if you
Hmm.
were kind of thinking about this at that time, do you use more the old Marvel method?
Um, well, yeah, with my own projects for sure. I'm not ever locked into dialogue until I'm lettering,
Hmm.
uh, because I feel like, at least the way I draw, like even with Flying Fortress, it was very much Marvel method. Andy Moore and I we'd sit and we'd chat, like, what do we want to happen in this issue? We left off here in issue 5. Okay, we know we want this and this to happen, and we want to end up here for 6. And then we would work on a rough script. Sometimes he would write it, or I would write it, or we'd bounce it back and forth. But it was never, dialogue wise, there was never any, like, very rarely was there something specific. Whereas normally when I would write a script, it's just like placeholder, uh, general theme or mood of the character. Um,
Hmm.
and then, maybe I draw it differently than what I was intentionally meant for in the dialogue. Then we change the dialogue um, to maybe um, correspond with how the facial expressions are going. Because there will be plenty of times where, like, well, he should be angry, but why is he smiling? So now we have to kind of change the way that this is said, and that's always fun to sort of think on your toes, like, how can we make this, well, we don't have a lot of room here, it needs to be one big word or just a couple of words to make the transition. Oops, I drew the guy on the wrong side of the panel, we need to have the other guy speak first. But I really enjoy that process because there's a creativity to it, and I think it's important to flex that creativity muscle no matter what part of the process you're in.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
Do you ever consider the aesthetics of the text and the balloon in terms of like the shape and maybe the coloring, like, and integrating that into an image um, by itself? So what I'm kind of thinking of is, oh man, you just said his name and now I'm blanking on Tom.
Or Zakowski.
Yes, Orzakowski.
Yeah.
I always get that wrong. Like he used to be the guy who did the letters for the X-Men throughout the
Right.
80s through most of their stuff. And if you go back and look at the lettering, they're fantastic. Like Warlock
Yeah.
had a different kind of text bubble, different characters, the shape would be different, or maybe a little difference in font. And it really added to the emotional impact of the speech, and to really help keeping track of who's saying what. Do
Mhm.
you ever sort of consider that as your, and if you do, how?
Well, it is, I would say, project to project.
Hmm.
Some people just want standard word balloons. They don't want any flair. Um, then I would say that's one extreme, just the balloons as is. The other extreme, I would say, is what I do on Graveyard Shift, where every character has their own balloon style. Vlad has the burst balloon with the red oval underlay,
Hmm.
underlayer. Mick has his telepathic balloons. Lily has the only one with regular balloons. Harker has his black sort of technical thing, and all of those were John and Mark sort of handed me the script and gave me rough ideas. Like, we want everybody's. It would say like Vlad's balloon. I forget the description, but it was like red or something like that.
Hmm.
Something to make it stand out. And mix it would say telepathic, and the uh the caption boxes would say like torn and tattered caption box. And I just sort of took that and improvised with whatever came to mind. And the funny thing is when we were going through our lettering pass on that, apparently that's how, with Vlad specifically, that's how they did it way back when they did Graveyard Shift like 10 years ago, back when it's one of its first iteration.
Oh,
So I sort
interesting.
of stumbled into that. But it depends project to project on how you want to give different characters voices. And you're right, like there are those books, like a lot of Marvel stuff, you'll see Wolverine, he has his own font. At least he
Hmm.
did in the late 90s and early 2000s. I don't know if he still does, but Thor has his own font. And I think that's kind of neat to it is a cue. It helps with balloons that are detached from a character, maybe off
Yeah.
panel or whatever. So you know who's talking always. But you want to be a little bit careful with that because it can be distracting. You can
Yeah.
be over the top too much. And I just feel like, depending on the situation, a lot of times people like villains to have their own sort of spooky looking black balloon, white text, or
Hmm.
uh, staticky or garbled looking balloon. But yeah, again, it's issue to issue, or it's story to story, book to book. My main goal aesthetically is to find a font that works, that complements the art, and to find a balloon style that complements the art. Most of the time, right, standard balloons work. If I'm working on, say, a more indie style artwork,
Hmm.
I tend to give the balloons a bit more hand drawn look to them. If you've read Downcast, it has
Yeah.
that. Um, Monster MD is going to have that as well. Um,
Oh, very
and
cool.
again, it's just like Marco McCagney's artwork in Monster MD, like the balloon style and the font, like it fits perfectly. Like everything. I felt like I really hit it out of the park when it gels. I found a sweet spot that makes it gel just perfectly, and that's what I'm looking forward to. And then, like on books like Red Rooster and all the Allegiance books, Mitch had sent me a rough idea that he had lettered, and it was one panel, I think, one page that was one panel, and his was hand drawn. I could tell he just did it in Photoshop and drew his own tail and everything,
Hmm.
but the tail had an open end instead of a point, and
Ah.
the balloon was, a bit misshapen. It wasn't perfect, and I took that, and that became the Allegiance Arts style of balloons across all their books. So
Oh.
we're yeah, so that was just me taking cue from what Mitch had sort of scribbled out on like a this is a balloon placement sort of reference sheet, and I said, okay, I like that. Oh, that's neat. Let's have the balloon tail open at the end. No, I haven't seen that before.
Oh,
And then
that's
that
mhm,
makes its own challenges too. So
for sure. Yeah, I haven't had a chance to see Red Rooster yet, but I did kind of notice that in some of the other ones,
Hmm.
which I thought was an
Yeah,
interesting choice.
all the Allegiance books have the same coloring, and that's a editorial choice so that readers will see that, and that'll be a consistent. While all the art styles are different through all the books,
Mhm.
there is at least a consistent. The books are designed the same in terms of layout and credits pages and all of
Uh-huh.
that, and the lettering is going to be the same as well. And that was a choice by Mitch, and to say like this is sort of the foundation that everything will be the same here, while the different artists and different creative teams can be a little bit there can be a big variety there. But
And so
it's fun to work on those books. It's a challenge too. It's a big
I
challenge,
can
but
imagine,
it's a
man, that's
good
got
one.
to be a pretty aggressive schedule.
It can be. It ebbs and flows. Like right now, uh, I'm like teetering on the edge of being busy. Um, with lettering, I've been working on my Battle Brick Road pages for drawing, which is nice having actual blocks of days available for drawing. But I get like Sovereign Wolf is coming soon. Um, I'm supposed to be getting the colored pages like any day now, and then that'll be a full book ready to go. Some books I work on, I don't like to work this way, but I cater to the client. Some books are
Sure.
like, hey, we've got 4 pages done. Can we get them lettered? I'm like, yeah, sure. Why not? Let's do it. And then it's a month later and we get another handful. But it's
Well,
just a balance. It ebbs and flows.
yeah.
Some days it's like some weeks it's every night lettering all day long, and then like right now this week it's been sort of just a normal, not too busy, not too not busy, just sort of a regular run of the mill kind of week.
And so speaking of Battle Brick Road, um, this is your second Indiegogo now, right?
Well, technically it's my fourth Indiegogo,
Four.
but it's
Okay.
my second story, my second book, second IP.
Okay. Yeah. I remember the big Flying Fortress one that was it like around January-ish?
Flying Fortress, the first one launched in on June 6th in 2019, and then it closed in November, and
Ah.
then we fulfilled that, and then I think January or February somewhere in there, I launched a battle damaged edition, and that was a what was left over. I had a lot of books that got damaged in shipping and printing errors and stuff,
Oh, yeah, that's
and
right.
so I did a follow up campaign with that at a discount. You could get a damaged book, and that one's still in demand, still up and running, ready to go, rock and roll. Um, but then back in 2012, we did an Indiegogo for the original Volume 1, the first 4 chapters of Flying Fortress, way back in the day. So that's why if you look at the campaign,
Yeah, it did
uh,
say 4.
it says 4 projects. Yeah, 3 of those are
Okay.
Flying Fortress projects, and then Battle Brick Road.
So what sort of knowledge did you take from those Flying Fortress campaigns to sort of up your game with Battle Brick Road?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I learned try not to fulfill a campaign over Christmas. That's never any fun. Uh, and be careful in what you not what you promise, but be careful in what you pick for your perks.
Hmm.
Uh, we had done there was there were up to 3 posters that you could get. You could either get 1 poster or 3 posters, 11 by 17 prints. And as far as the printer I used, they couldn't French fold them themselves, so we had to do all the folding of those posters
Ooh,
ourselves. And that was, you know, probably over 1,000 posters, probably 1,500 posters that we've been folding. And as orders, we still get orders every week on the in demand one, and I'd say 1 or 2 of those I've got to fold. 3 posters each one. So it's just, I mean, it's not a big deal, but it's kind of a pain in the neck to have to
well,
deal with that. So with
seems
Battle Brick
pretty
Road,
time
there's one
consuming
poster.
too.
Yeah.
All right, so can you walk us through Battle Brick Road a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. You want the pitch or walk through the campaign?
Well, let's hear about the story first.
Yeah. So, Battle Brick Road is Zeb Hatfield and I's dark sci-fi military version of the Wizard of Oz. I would say it's inspired by the Wizard of Oz. It's not fully one for one a rehash of it. We follow obviously the story of Dorothy Gale, and we call her Thea in this book. She is on a mission to find her dad, and she, through happenstance, discovers Oz, this utopia that she has heard about. So she's grown up in this dusty desert wasteland of the great United States, the great American desert. That's all her life she's ever known, is this Mad Max style lifestyle. And she gets this message from her long lost dad that says, Dorothy, I'm here. Oz is real. And when you get here, follow the Yellow Brick Road and you'll find me. And that gets her on this adventure. And along the way, she takes her deadly sidekick Toto. She meets an assassin sniper, Scarecrow. In future books, that's book 1. In book 2 and 3 and 4, there's going to be 4 books total. This campaign is just the first book, where we're going to meet the genetic hybrid super soldier lion and the tactical Tin Man, if you will. We've just sort of taken a spin on Oz that I hadn't seen before, and really kind of injected it with a lot of action and a lot of character. Like, there's really great character work. Zeb has done really well in making these characters likable where they need to be, and maybe some characters unlikable where they need to be. He's really woven a great deal more into the character than I ever would have if I had written this on my own. This was just, for me, it was just about blowing stuff up. I was like, no, let's actually tell a good story. I'm like, okay, we can. Yeah. So, yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, and one of the things that struck me when I started to look into the campaign more is, now I hope you don't take it the wrong way, but I think you've really stepped up the art
No, yeah.
compared to your last
Yeah.
your last one too. Not that it was bad, but just this looks like, I don't know, like, to me you could plop this into the 80s, into the 90s, and it would fit, in like one of the high end volumes from one of the big 2.
Thank you. Yeah, and you can be honest. The Flying Fortress artwork really is kind of terrible. That was me learning how to make comics by making comics, and it was 10 years of off and on working on
Mhm.
it. So
Well, I didn't think it was terrible, but this is like A game, I would say.
thank you. Yeah, I'm really it's been Flying Fortress. I stopped drawing it in 2017. Um, it's just been a wild ride of staying creative. I hadn't really done any comic book stuff after that. I started painting just because I kind of got burnt out on sequential art and pencils and inks and all that. And I wanted to try something new. Oh, see, there you go. And I actually really, really enjoyed painting. I haven't done it since I started working on Oz and since I started lettering. Just haven't. I mean, time wise, I don't know where I would fit it in the schedule.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying the ease that drawing has become. No, I still
Mm.
struggle through the pages, but there's a difference in drawing now than when I was drawing Flying Fortress. There's it's turning out right the first time instead of the 8th time or 10th time when I'm trying to lay out a page or whatever. And I'm sure that's going to switch, and I'm going to hit a wall somewhere in the next in the next 20 or so pages, and I won't know how to get my way out of it. But for now,
Well,
I'm enjoying the ride while I'm on it.
I think everybody hits a little drawing block every now and again.
Yeah,
Are you at the point where you see something in your head and when you draw it, it's pretty much the same thing?
I wish. No. I'm still very I can get the rough down. I could get the idea, the rough sketch out. I can make that look right because it's still so rough that I can
Mhm.
interpret it. But then when I try and take that further to finish, it it doesn't always hit. And even on these pages on the campaign, they didn't hit right the first time. So, like, scroll down. Like, we'll just go through the pages here. That's the
Sure.
first page. When I first drew it, it was set, I'd say 60 years sooner. They were driving a four-wheel off-road, like Land Rover. They were being chased by military style APC vehicles.
Hmm.
Uh, and it was good, but I thought, oh, we've got this sci-fi story. Let's kick it up a notch. We can have like swoop bikes from Star Wars versus this, DeLorean looking hover car, and just sort of like make it fun to draw. And these, like, I kit bashed models because I knew that I was going to have to draw these things for a dozen pages, and I wanted to show them off. So I in Google SketchUp I found a bunch of different models, and I took,
Hmm.
you know part from A and put it to B and put it on the thing and did, and uh, made my own vehicles that way. And I think they fit the right style that I was going for. They fit the right theme. And now
Hmm.
I have them and I can reference them or do whatever I need to for making sure that it stays accurate. But the like the characters on top, inside, all of that was just made up on the spot. Um, this Not much changed on this page. The interior, I made up most of that interior of the car, and then like
Hmm.
they're in a canyon that is a city block, and they're actually like hauling ass out of there. So as the page progresses and as the chase progresses, there are less and less buildings as they are leaving the city. Um, this next page, that bottom panel, I was never happy with it, and then I changed it 'cause it just was confusing. It's supposed to be one of those bike riders, reflection
Oh,
of Toto in his eyes, and that'll make more
okay.
sense when it's colored, obviously.
Yeah.
The lion on panel 1, that little lion stuffed
Hmm.
animal was added later because it's referenced in, like, chapter 4. Zeb wrote this little one-off little line of dialogue where Dorothy says, "Oh, I used to have a lion toy when I was a kid." And I thought, well, this is the perfect place to put it. So
Ah,
that'll be a callback whenever we get to chapter 4. You'd be like, oh yeah, she's got it right there. And
very cool.
it's very difficult for me to go from layouts to final pencils and then just be happy with it. I always go back later and adjust and tweak and erase, and there's always
Well,
something that needs adjusting. And artwork is never truly finished, right?
absolutely. I mean, I've heard that about Mark Silvestri, Jim Lee. That's what they relied on the editors for, was to tell them like,
Mhm.
no, no, you got to stop.
Yeah. Yeah, no editor for me, not art wise. We have a story editor, but um, I would I'll look at it and I'll think, it's not quite right, but I'll set it down and move on to the next page, and then I'll come back to it and kick it up a notch, if you will. So,
Hmm.
and then there are those decisions like, okay, I could add this or that, but will it benefit? Will it take away? There's always those decisions you have to make as an artist. Like,
Hmm.
if I add the detail here, does it muddy up that page? Does it muddy up that panel and maybe draw focus on to it when it shouldn't? And I like swimming in that pond though, trying to figure this stuff out.
And let's talk about the characters here. Man, the Scarecrow character looks awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, he's a fan favorite. I've had a I got an email the other day, like, asking me. He's like, "Hey, I saw you on Ethan's stream. Are you gonna make a Scarecrow action figure?" I'm like, "Man, I would love to. I really would, but let's get the book out first." Yeah, Scarecrow was just one of those things that kind of made sense, like a guy
Mhm.
in a sniper suit. Originally, it was like a big ghillie suit, and he was all furry, and I was like, "Nah, we don't need a bush Wookiee here. Let's make him a little bit more tactical and cool looking." And
Corn coming out of
so
his ghillie suit.
yeah, so I kept a little bit of that a frill like on his
like on the
sleeves and
boots.
yeah, the bottom of his pants and stuff. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. There she is, Dorothy. As you can see, her design hasn't changed too much.
Mhm.
Those two pieces of artwork are 2 years apart. Um, that one
These
and the
2
one
here?
below. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, I mean, this I would say that this looks the top one looks closer to the, Flying Fortress style.
Yeah.
Mm, um, but, I was kind of wondering too, who did these colors?
Farah Normaliza or Normaliza, I'm not sure exactly how it's pronounced. She is a colorist I found through, well, we talked about him earlier, Scott McCullough of Door Kickers.
Mhm.
She colored that book. And it also had a no ink style. It was colored over pencils, and I'd seen her uh, portfolio on her Instagram, and she had done some test, just warm up pieces or whatever on some Kerry Nord pages from back when he did Conan back in like '06,
Mhm.
and those were also just pencils. And it was a style I was wanting to do for this book of no inks, just colors over pencils. That was the test page that I sent her, that one that with the Toto coming out of the drop pod and all of that. And I was like, it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. And then I said, you're the you're the one for the job. So I got her on board for the project. And then it took me a while to sort of get started, because lettering was taking too much time. And I got put on a waiting list. So all I got was the cover up front. And now she's currently coloring this first batch of pages that I've sent her. So
Okay.
I'm looking forward to updating the campaign with full color pages here soon.
Excellent.
But she does a fantastic job.
Yeah, anyone who watches this channel knows I like to complain about the coloring in pretty much every comic book I find, just because I hate modern coloring so much.
Yeah.
It's like, you look at the old books from Marvel and DC, and they look fantastic. And it's like all the lessons that people had to learn back when you were limited by newsprint and I think it was like the 64 Pantone colors.
Hmm.
They forgot all those methods of design. And there's so many books I see which just look like people vomited color
Yeah.
onto a page. Or they're stuck in like the 2010s. You remember like all those Transformers movies where everything was cyan in the background and everybody in the front was Oompa Loompa orange?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, but this is great. The colors they're all coordinated. The background recedes from the middle ground. The foreground is popped out. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, the this actually to me this looks better than a lot of the stuff I see coming out of Marvel and DC these days.
Thank you. I think she would really enjoy to hear you say that. She's fantastic. This book would not look the same with another colorist. It just wouldn't. I was very much trying to find somebody that would do a Dave Stewart, Matt Hollingsworth style of muted, textury, popping color where it needed to be, style, and she just fit right in the pocket just perfectly.
Yeah, and to me it's interesting to see what's going on sort of with the new crop of indie creators, especially in terms of colors. Like you've got Kyle Ritter.
Hmm.
He's got the Van Sciververse sort of locked up in that
Yeah.
style, and then his own book. And then I don't know. It seemed like for a while there was just kind of I don't know, like a great big potential opening. But it's nice to see that people are really coming into the fold and I think elevating a lot of the projects.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, coloring can really change the artwork. I mean, if I don't know if you had seen the Unforgettable Tales stuff. I'm sure somewhere out there you can find the original artwork that was just black and white that Ethan drew when he was 19, and then the updated stuff with um, Kyle's colors. I mean, it's a completely different book. I mean,
Hmm.
it changes the game altogether. I, I'm very happy to be a part of that and honored to be sharing credit with Kyle and Ethan on that book. as letterer, but there's this, I won't say stigma, but there's a catch to it because I had to letter over Ethan's letters. I had to trace the balloons as they were, so they were wonky and not very letterer friendly.
Mhm.
So there's a bit of like, man, oh cool, I got cover credit with Ethan, but then don't open it up because it's kind of, it wasn't me in my fullest, in my finest hour. But I think I really do think I did a great job with what I had, and I'd do it again um, in a heartbeat because it was a lot of fun to work on, and just being able to have my name on a cyberfrog project is pretty rad.
Yeah, I haven't gotten that yet, but hopefully in the future I'll have a chance to review it.
Yeah, I think it's shipping like in a week or two. So
So let's talk about this toy. Like,
yeah,
man,
well, yeah, pretty cool, huh?
so can everyone expect this under their Christmas tree this year? Or
Not this year, but maybe a year or two from now, I hope. A couple weeks ago, I guess it's probably been a month now. I got a text from Zeb. No, nothing except a photo. This, and I'm like, what is this? How did you like? I remember him vaguely mentioning somebody could sculpt, and like, I remember, like, I don't remember conversations very well. Um, and I was like, dude, why, what, who, like, and he goes, my cousin did this. So apparently his cousin
man,
took my drawing of Scarecrow and just went wild on it. And he goes, I said, I'm sharing this. He goes, no, it's just a prototype. I said, I'm sharing it. I will call it a prototype, but I'm sharing it. And it got people all excited about a possible Scarecrow statue or action figure. I'm still excited for it. I mean, it turned out, again, for a prototype, it looks fantastic. He got everything baseline correct. Like, he's lanky, he doesn't have a lot of definition in his limbs. He's sort of a tall, kind of spindly guy. He's got the hood and the mask looks
mhm.
right. There's another photo which isn't on the front page. It's in one of the updates with all the cross stitching within the mask that holds it together. It needs a bit of tatter. It needs, like some wear and tear on his hood and on his tunic and all of that. But yeah,
Still, now you
it's
just need to get all the other ones.
I know it makes me smile every time I look at it. I'm like, what the possibilities here are fantastic. So hopefully we could get it'd be kind of neat to have one per campaign or do something where they would all sort of fit together and you'd have the whole team, even if it were just statues. I
Yeah.
think, yeah,
Oh, for sure. I could definitely see these as collectibles.
I'd buy one.
So, now you mentioned there's going to be 4 books total.
Yeah. So the Battle Brick Road story is a
Mhm.
total of 4 books. Book one being Operation Zephyr. And I believe book two is going to be called Fall of the Yellow Brick Road. Book three is, I don't remember book three and four. Zeb has them. I have them written down somewhere. I don't remember the titles of them, but it's we're following Thea Gale as she um, leaves the old world and try on this quest to find her dad, and that takes her down the Battle Brick Road where she meets the likes of characters like Bach, who's from the original novel, a guy named I want to call him Cobain because when he what's his name? I forget the guy's name, but you're going to see him in the book one. And the way that Zeb described him, I just pictured him as like a trashy Kurt Cobain character. You're going to meet the Scarecrow, you're going to meet Tin Man the Lion, and the Watchers, and follow this journey that is familiar. But as Zeb has told me, he's sent the script to writer friends of his, and they forget that they're in Oz until they forget that it's a Wizard of Oz book.
Ah,
And then there'll be something that happens like, oh yeah, this is Wizard of Oz. How cool is this that this is Wizard of Oz? And it just gets me excited. I know some people are like, it's another Wizard of Oz thing. I'm like, yeah, but it's you just haven't seen this like this before.
well, I mean, I think a lot of the problem with many of the Wizard of Oz adaptations is that it's like all the movie remakes.
Hmm.
Like what was his name? Gus Van Sant remade Psycho.
Yeah.
Why? What are you gonna
Yeah,
add to it?
yeah, a
Nothing.
shot for shot remake. Like, okay,
Yeah. It's
I could
like
have gone to Blockbuster and just seen it.
it's like some
Yeah,
company's gotta keep the copyright or something.
something.
Um,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
when
and
you
there,
actually have an original idea to work with, Wizard of Oz is very fertile territory, I think.
it is. I mean, there's a fantastic world. We don't have any of the magical,
Mhm.
childrenly kind of stuff, and it's very grounded and rooted in a science. I wouldn't say it's like rooted in science, but it's more of a science fiction. It's a um, dystopian, war torn thing, and a lot of the odd stuff you see is very whimsical. And even if it's a horror version of Oz, it still has a certain f- familiarity to it that is like, oh, it's Wizard of Oz. Like even in like their logo design, there's always something about the Oz is always in the name, the OZ,
Mhm.
and there's always green and yellow and all of this. And I was very conscious to try and avoid all of that stuff. Like we're skirting the edges of the Oz story without going over it too much to make it where it's like, oh, I know what's going to happen next.
Right.
I feel like we've got enough in this story that'll keep people guessing. And I for one, I'm in love with the story. Like we've got something special here.
Yeah, I think it looks great, and I can't wait to see. I got my copy ordered or backed,
Good.
I guess you'd say,
Yeah. Thank you.
and I can't wait to see the other three now. So now that you are the master, you've got a bunch of campaigns under your belt, pretty
Yeah.
successful, 44,000 with 6 days left.
Hmm.
Hopefully, we'll get you over 50.
That's the
Um,
goal. Yeah.
what advice do you have for people who want to come up and make their own books or get started in the indies?
Uh, there's a few things I could say. I will say this: if you have an idea and you want to make it, just make it. Like, don't let anybody say that that's not a good idea, that you shouldn't do it, or whatever. Don't don't plan on it being this 12-volume epic series, and you're going to hire one artist to do all 1,000 pages, and
Mhm.
that's not feasible. Start small, start very small, and do it just if you can fund it by yourself, do it by yourself. Everything. Like I'm giving you the advice of the road that I traveled.
Mhm.
Uh, Maybe do something with a friend, but do everything. Get your hands in all of the pies. Learn if you're the artist and you've never colored or inked before, learn how to do that stuff. If you've never lettered before, find some tutorials online. Eventually, I'm going to be making my own because I feel like I could teach this stuff pretty well. But you
You
know,
should.
make your story. If you can tell the story, make a little 8-page ash can and just sort of understand how comic books are made because that'll teach you everything you need to know. If you make your own book, it's a little 8-page story. That's how we started Flying Fortress. That 8-page story is in the Flying Fortress remastered collection. In the very back of the book, there's the ash can that Andy and I put together. And I learned, or at least I started to learn how to make comic books with that. And my entire journey of learning to make comic books was the entire, 8 issues of Flying Fortress. In terms of comic books, I suggest doing that. Um, in terms of crowdfunding, um, it's it's getting crowded out there.
Mhm.
So you really have to have an idea that you have to have a concept that really turns heads and gets people excited. And it has to be sexy. It has to be just something about it that goes, oh, that's interesting. That sounds badass, or however you want to put it. Where somebody says that, not you don't want people to go like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. you know,
Yeah,
you don't
yeah.
want that. You want that visceral reaction, like, wow, that's amazing. I love that idea. So you know, try to have a great idea, build an audience. It's very important to build an audience. I think one of the main reasons why I'm looking at a campaign that has 44 grand in it is because people know who I am from all of the projects I've worked on. I don't have a very big YouTube presence, but it's bigger now than it was in Flying Fortress. Twitter's the same way. Your audience is your key. It's your it is what will make you successful. The customers, the fans, the backers, whatever you want to call them, they are the make or break point on your campaign. Had I not gone on any other big channels, I'm blessed to be able to be on Ethan's show often, or Cecil or John. These guys have big channels, but on my own, I still think I would probably be looking at 25 grand on my campaign, if not more, because people just know who I am. I have an audience. My name is out there, and that goes a long way. The same time, sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, but the same time, people have known about this particular story for 2 years, and that goes a long way too. Think about how successful Cash Grab was. People had known about Cash Grab for 2 years before he launched it. People knew about what I called the Oz book back then. It was just called Operation Zephyr. I had talked about this story before I launched Flying Fortress, and even all through that campaign, like, yeah, I'm back in Flying Fortress. Man, I can't wait for your Oz story. I'm there day one. For 2 years, I would get those messages. So there is this buildup. Obviously, you don't need to build up necessarily for 2 years. There's another book coming out. I mentioned it earlier, Sovereign Wolf Clandestiny. I think that campaign's going to do great. The art looks fantastic. It's going to be almost, I think, completely done before he even launches, which is a bonus.
And who's doing that one? Who's doing that campaign?
Let me look at my Twitter. His name is Eddie Winkler.
Eddie Winkler. Okay.
Yeah. And so he has been doing that same thing, building that hype prior to the campaign launching, and that goes a long way. That's all a part about building the audience, is get them to be like, oh yeah, that looks cool, and then they see it again, think, oh yeah, I remember that, it looks cool, I'm going to back that when it launches. And then when it does, you come out of the gates front loading the campaign, or whatever you want to call it. But it's important. Those day one, day two, the first 48 hours are very important. So having that audience, having that great idea to pitch to that audience, and start small. Always start small, because the audience is more willing to back you if it seems likely that you will fulfill.
That's true. Yes.
Yeah.
I think the whole fulfillment thing too these days, people are not as forgiving as perhaps they were in 2018.
Yeah, I think there have been a few campaigns that have ruffled some feathers.
But yeah, I can definitely see as the small guy, you don't have the however many years of industry experience, so you got to make sure you deliver that first time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, how do you say, I've got a 200 page. This is what I did with Flying Fortress. Is it was over 200 pages. But my the spice or whatever, I sometimes I struggle with words, but the way that I was able to sell it was like, this book is done. I just need to reletter it. Like, it was done. I had updated maybe 10 panels throughout the almost 200 pages of story, and I relettered everything. So like, there wasn't a long wait. I mean, I launched in June. I was shipping in December. So if you come out and nobody knows who you are, and you're like, I have this book and it's 200 pages and here's 5 pages of artwork, the audience might be a little bit hesitant to say, okay, here you go. Especially if you have a big goal of like 15 grand. More people are willing to back it if it's already been funded. More people are willing to back it when they know it's going to be shipping soon. You get more backers. There's a whole, there's a whole different ball game when it comes to campaign stuff. It's its own art form. You got to play into algorithms and think about marketing and all of that stuff, streaming every day. And that's a whole show on its own to try and break that down. So.
All right. Well, Eric, thank you very much for stopping by. You
Yeah, of
are a
course.
busy man. You've got another show to go do. You've got
I
books
do.
to sell.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to give a shout out to where you're heading off to next?
Yeah, I'm gonna be on Michael Bancroft's show in, in about 10 minutes or so. So,
So, for anyone who still wants to go, go check that out, and you'll see more about Battle Brick Road. Any final thoughts?
I don't know, be good to one another and back Battlebrook Road.
All right. All right. Thanks everyone for stopping by. More videos coming soon.
Thanks.